This is Anti-Tube. In this video, I'm going to wash and dry and lubricate the body of Regina, my Singer Model 403. If you follow the series, you see I have removed many of the smaller parts of the machine, and you don't need to do that. Remove as much as you like, if any. But before I start, I'm just going to kind of run through the process for you, because you really do want to pre-treat it or clean it on your work table or bench, and then go right into the main wash and then dry it right away, bring it back here and get some oil on it. And those process should just move right along. So I've got my work area prepped here. I have put down some like a plastic garbage can, and I just have some paper I found in my recycle bin at the condos where I live, and I'll put down junk mail advertisements, supermarket flyers, just any kind of paper to kind of absorb the overflow of the cleaner here. I also have a plastic bag to cover the bed while I'm working up on top, because I want to say again that Krud Kutter can dull this type of paint. It can kind of take a little of the shine off of it, and you'll need to polish it back up. So if you only have the Krud Kutter on there a short time, it's no problem. If it sits on there, you're going to see some of these little bit dull spots. So I'm using a solution of Krud Kutter cleaner and degreaser in a spray bottle at about 15 to 20% Krud Kutter, to the rest just tap water. Okay, and I have brushes for my pre-treating. I have some much higher mixture percentage, anywhere from 75 to 100% Krud Kutter. I put on the real greasy spots there, you know. I have a damp towel to clean up if I get a lot on here and I don't want to leave it, so I'm going to wipe it up. I have a bunch of old t-shirt rags in case I need them, and let me show you how I set up the washing station. Wash my sewing machines in the tub shower combo, and I have it all ready to go, so once I pre-treat or pre-clean the machine, I can bring it right in here and do the total washing. So I use a bucket to set it on, just to get some height up off the bottom, and I put a mat to protect in case it slips off the bucket. I don't want to damage the shower or anything. And I have my water source and my Krud Kutter spray bottle and some brushes and stuff, and so I'm going to wash it and rinse it and do any scrubbing in between that I feel I need to. And then I've got my leaf blower, which is what I like to use because it's so quick. But I have also used, and you can use of course, a hair dryer if that's your preferred method. The idea is you just want to get it very dry. Okay, so you're getting the idea. I'm going to pre-treat it, wash it, dry it, and bring it back here to oil it. So of course I have my oil and grease ready to go, and because you can get flash rust on some of the steel sometimes, because you're stripping off all the old oil and grease, and I found that, you know, if you dry it right away you don't have too many problems. But if you get some spots of rust, I have my rust remover here. It's also a Krud Kutter brand made by Rustoleum called The Muss for Rust. So I have that handy in case I need to do a little treating for rust, little rust spots or anything. So let me get set up here, and we'll start with the pre-treatment or pre-cleaning of Regina. Okay, Over the years, I found machines in all kinds of different conditions, and people have used a lot of strange lubricants, greases, oils. You know, WD-40 seems to be a favorite. It's not really a lubricant, and when it dries, it gets brown and it gets very hard to clean. And some kind of a black stuff I have found that maybe graphite people put and then got mixed with grease, and it dries very hard. So a lot of times what I'll do is just go through with a brush or dry rag and barbecue sticks and an old knife blade and scrape out and brush out as much of the stuff as I can get to. And I like to dry brush these gears because between the teeth there's a little favorite space, and the dirty grease gets ground in there over the years. And I buy these little wire, they're called detail brushes, and I'll just brush out these gears like that before I get any of the Krud Kutter on them, and try and, you know, I just use the brush to rotate the gears there and just try and loosen up and get stuff out. And it gets flicked around, but we're going to clean that anyway. The hook gears are difficult to get through on the top, you know. You can go in from the side with like some smaller brushes and get up there on the gears and try and clean them as best you can. What I've noticed is these gears don't seem to get as dirty and as bad as the main drive gears over here. Once I'm ready, I usually kind of start with I take my stronger solution of Krud Kutter and I just take a cheap artist brush and I start getting that on the worst spots where I see the old grease built up and dried up and stuff in there, and I just start putting a coating on the worst spots of this and let it start softening that up. And I'll put on any place that you oil or grease. I especially pre-treat like this because that's usually where you have your spillage and your overflow, and you get oil and grease build up, and then all the dirt and dust just loves to stick to that stuff, as you can imagine. You know, I get in the throat plate lifter pin tunnels here, try and get those going. There's some pivot points where you usually oil, in the feed lifting bar and the feed rocker shaft and the feed lifter shaft. Don't forget up under here, because oil can get thrown up from the gears there. So I kind of just do that generally at first and see what effect that has, and then I'll come in with some of my brushes and start brushing stuff to make sure it's loosened and it's gonna come off okay, you know. So let me just continue. I'll go up here in the motor housing area. Anything that I see up in here. This machine was not over oiled and greased. It's kind of what I call a lowly maintained or lightly maintained, and kind of had dry gears and stuff. and those are much easier to clean than one that's just had tons of grease and oil slopped all over in here. If you do a few of these, you'll see quite a variety. I've had a couple machines I didn't really have to pre-treat, other than I just sprayed it and lightly brushed around. And I said, wow, this thing's pretty clean. And I've had some that were really filthy. And what I have found is the more time you spend pre-cleaning or pre-treating, the cleaner your wash is going to come out, you know. And it's easier here to pre-treat all this stuff and brush it and stuff than it is when I'm at the washing station. So that's why I started doing pre-cleaning. I first just started with the gears, and when I saw how pre-cleaning these gears came out so well, I said, wow, I'm just going to like kind of pre-treat the whole machine. Okay, you see just from dipping the brush in there how that's getting dirty now. And one thing I'm a little obsessive about is cleaning these teeth of the gears. So I always pay some extra attention to them, and I can reach up and turn the arm shaft if I want, and you know, rotate to new areas, and be sure I'm getting into those. If I have real bad buildup around these oil points, I'll scrub it with the wire brush a little bit. Where I have this dried up, what looks like WD-40, and it gets that, it looked like varnish kinda. That can be difficult to get off just by spraying it and rinsing it in the shower. So I usually this is a big known spot for that right here, and I'm not sure why this always seems to get a lot of oil buildup. But I have just found, you know, I'll turn on the TV or music or something, and I'll just sit here and pre-treat this. And I start at the bottom, I guess, because I'm not worried about the full-strength Krud Kutter getting on the outside paint. If it gets on the paint in here, I don't really care about that. I'm not too worried about that. See, there's where that dried up oil and stuff has gotten also. Okay, then I might take one of my, I call them tube brushes, but I guess you call them bottle brush, and I go in the tubes for the lifter pins that lift the needle plate, and make sure that I get some Krud Kutter in there and brush it around to try and get stuff off of there. I'll take some smaller brushes, let's see, maybe like that, and I'll just get them where any place a screw goes, you know, to make sure I get the gunk out of there. And see, that's where the indicator plate for the throat lifter is, up in here. See if I can get, there we go, and get those. I see I should get some more on here. It's starting to you know, loosen up and get kind of sticky, and getting that grease off of there. Then I have a bigger brush. I think that's a wheel brush I bought for $1 at the dollar store. Where else? And I like to get it in there because I can get it in around these parts and up on the shafts, you know, the feed fork connector and shafts and stuff that run up to the top. I can get it in here all around where the motor and wire harness go, and can get it partially up in the little motor tunnel. This is good for getting the top side, the inside under here, because grease and stuff does get thrown off those gears and end up there. So I think you're getting a pretty good idea of what's going on here. And I've got other, you know, brushes and toothbrushes and stuff to try and get to anywhere I feel I can get into the tight spots and get the Krud Kutter in there and do a little scrubbing just to loosen stuff up. And that way when I spray it in the shower and rinse it, you know, you just see all this old gunk coming out of there. It's quite amazing. The first time I used Krud Kutter, I was shocked. You know, I had cleaned a couple machines with like a couple quarts of alcohol and 1,000 Q-tips and a couple of days of work, and I was like, man, there just has to be a better way than this. So I'm going to put some up here because these bottom edges have got stuff that's dripped down onto them and dried, and they didn't come off with my nylon brush, so I'm going to work on those with this wire brush to see if that's going to help. That's helping a little bit. I bring a nylon scrubby. Yeah, these are good too for those kind of areas. I'll dip them in my cleaner and scrub on those spots. Usually if a machine only has sewing machine oil as a lubricant and some kind of approved grease for the gears, like the old Singer motor lube is what they put on the gears, I'd be done with this now. But when people start using WD-40 and household oils and stuff, they have a lot of different additives. And those additives are what dry up and bond to the paint and to the metal and to each other, and really get hard, just really super hard, and that's what makes it harder to clean up. I got these bigger areas pretty good, so you can see a couple of spots you can get to by the feed lifter where the feed dog is attached to. Get up in here around these tight areas. I'm going to try and take one of those with the grease back in onto my hook gears, and you know, slowly rotate those gears while I'm scrubbing them like that, help loosen up any residual stuff there. I think we're looking pretty good here. Okay. So just from that, dipping the brush in here, you see how this looks now. Remember, this was crystal clear like water, and this is just the you know, like a pre-treatment. So maybe you can imagine how much of that stuff is really hidden in a machine. And that's one of the main reasons I like using the Krud Kutter. So I'm gonna stand the machine up now. Okay, so let me reset. You know what? Before I do that, I'm just going to just spray a little in these corners and behind the gears and stuff, just to kind of let them start soaking in that. Okay, let me reset the camera. Okay, you can see how much of my stuff leaked out. That's why I protect my workspace. Let's get over here now and take a look at the top of this. Maybe I can put this block behind it to keep an angle up at us. And then this is where I'm going to throw just a piece of plastic over the bed, so if stuff drips out of this arm, I don't want it sitting for a long time on that bed. Okay? And if you remember the disc driving worm wheel pictures, that area was pretty gross, pretty filthy in there. So I'm going to start just pre-treating all the low spots here. Somebody I can tell a lot of WD-40 up in here, and those kind of lightweight household lubricants. And WD-40 is really not a lubricant, you know, it's a penetrant and stuff, and I use it to help loosen parts and stuff, and it's great for that. But if somebody sprays it on here thinking that it's going to lubricate the metal parts of the machine, that's probably doing more damage than anything good. Here's my two upper gears here, so I'm gonna, and I dry brush those the same way, and I took a rag and a knife blade and scraped out, and took dry brushes and stuff and brushed out all this area as best as I could. So now I'm going to be putting this degreaser down in there to let it start soaking on all that nasty old dried up grease. It's funny, when you get down into these things, you can see 2 or 3 different kinds of grease sometimes. Like the original grease, maybe the factory used on that worm gear that's cut into the shaft, and then maybe some different grease on top of that, and then you have white grease somebody used, lithium or something, and then the next person thought, oh, this thing needs graphite. You know, and the problem is nobody ever cleans out the old stuff very much. So you just get like layers of gunk in there. And this is another particularly bad area. I've got a lot of black grease that was thrown out in here. And I dry brushed this and scraped it with a knife blade and popsicle sticks and tried to dig out as much as I could. So now I'm going to get this pre-treatment thing going here and try and clean this as much as I can. Boy, oh boy, huh? And you'll see me put this liquid right into the oil ports on the bushings, bearings, and the shafts and stuff like that. And it starts degreasing all the muck out of there. And sometimes after you wash and dry, everything will be frozen. You can't even turn the arm shaft anymore because there's just no grease in there. But you know, the machine sits up like this, so all the oil you put in there when the machine's not in use settles into the bottom of those bearings and bushings and stuff. And if the machine's been sitting in somebody's closet or garage or basement for a decade or two, it's just solidified and it's hard. And when I put this degreaser in there, it'll help soften it up so I can wash it out. But then you got nothing. So I guess I'm kind of warning you, as you get degreaser into those areas, and wash it in the shower and dry it, it may come out frozen. It won't turn. And then what you have to do is start putting new oil in there, and it'll slowly spread around a little bit, and you'll be able to get things moving again. I've never had any permanent problem, you know, with that. So same thing. I'm taking my smaller brush and trying to get into these smaller areas and get all of the little pieces with some full strength or strong percentage strength of the Krud Kutter. And especially down here around that worm wheel down in there, the bottom of that, and the worm gear on the arm. Okay, you see here maybe now why I protect the bed, because you know stuff will start dripping out of the bottom of the arm here, and I don't want that sitting on the bed, top of the bed. So I'm going to dip my wheel brush again and get a little bit of that stuff on there, and I'm going to start brushing around with this brush and getting as much as I can, and getting it into any area that I can get it into. So you see maybe why over the years I've come to take more and more of the parts out, because I'll clean the small parts with the Krud Kutter and the kitchen sink and stuff and dry them and just put a light protective coating of oil on them. And then this gives me better, fuller access to the main body. If you saw Stella, the 237, I said the 7 screws method of cleaning, and I just took off very few items. And you see here I have the wire harness and light and terminals out, and as I mentioned, I don't even always do that anymore, because I've cleaned them in the shower and with Krud Kutter and dried them, and they have it's had no bad effect on them at all. So okay, there's my general brushing. Now I'm going to start using some smaller brushes and get in here, and that'll fit down and go right in to that worm gear area and scrub it. And then I'll turn my arm shaft to rotate that a little bit and get some more down in there. Clean this area out. I get down on the top gear of the vertical shaft where it mates with this vertical gear here. Come on back up here. Oof. And I'll do that area also to get this set of gears as clean as I can. Go around here in the wire tunnel and back behind the bite amplitude selector. Gently around these parts. Okay, then I can keep going to smaller brushes. You know, these are like 10 brushes for $7 on eBay, and I can get into little places like the oil ports and the screw holes, and get down again around that worm gear from different angles that I can't get into with a larger brush. And some more of these screw holes, and I think this is starting to look pretty good here. Let me try this little bit bigger one and see if I can go around that bite amplitude selector here. Get down in there. That area I don't think ever gets cleaned. I don't know if the Singer stores even clean that out. I think they just went in from the side down here and squirted some more grease on the. Although the retired guys I knew said that most of them had started with the, you know, the black Singers, but if a machine was really bad, they said they'd take out the wiring and the motor and they'd soak it in what they call Varsol, which maybe was just kerosene. They just soak it in a big bucket of that overnight, and come in the morning and drain it and wipe it down and start lubricating stuff. So of course that's a pretty volatile compound, and this Krud Kutter is a lot less volatile, more biodegradable and earth friendly, and doesn't smell or anything like that. So I'm sure kerosene you could probably do this with. If you want to have a flammable, stinky thing like that around, it's up to you. Okay, I think I'm about done with this top part. The last thing that I'm going to do up here is I'm going to suck up some of this Krud Kutter into this little syringe of mine. Come on, you. And I'm just going to squirt some of it into those oiling ports. And hope that I get a good dose of it in there so that I can clean those out too. Right? Okay. So let's see what I got here. So you see this pretty thin. I take one of my rags here and wipe up this stuff that's been leaking out. So I want to turn around now, and I want to treat the you know what, I think I'm going to just tilt this up and let it kind of drip out of there as much as possible, and then use an old rag to soak that up. And I want to see how much I did get on the bed anyway. Yep. Yeah, you see I got some here. So that's where I take my damp rag and I wipe off any of the Krud Kutter and stuff that I got on the paint. I want to keep that paint as nice as possible. Okay. Then let's take a look here at the back end here. I think I want to take my brush in this, let's see, can I lower this a little bit more? I want to get my brush into the hand wheel and arm shaft area. Right? And this brush works great for that, doesn't it? Get all around there. There's a counterweight in there in the back, and this is the where the feed regulator screw goes, and then this is where the 3-pin terminal goes. I'll get that a little bit, and I think I need something a little smaller to get in there for that feed regulator screw area. Kind of get that brushed around. I need a little skinny brush to get into where the bobbin winder frame screws in there on the hinge screw. Get that going. I'm going to wipe up a little bit of this Krud Kutter that got around here. Okay. Now I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to do the nose area. Yeah, I think I got some more Krud Kutter spilling back there. Put this down to try and absorb the dripping. You see, this nose area here can be pretty gunky and pretty built up over the years. It's hard to get back in there and clean because you have your pressure bar, your needle bar, your take-up lever, you know, all that stuff in the way. So most people never really get in here and clean this stuff, get the old stuff out. They just keep putting new oil on everything, and so let me turn this. Oh good, the arm shaft is still rotating, the gears are still turning, they haven't seized up yet, so that's good. Okay, then I'm going to take a brush and go down through these bushings for the needle bar, right, and then where the pressure bar bushing goes, I'll go there, get that nice and cleaned out, right, and a little tiny one where the tension stud goes through and into the back where the tension releasing pin lever hinge screw goes, and then the pressure bar lifter hinge screw goes, just to help make sure I'm going to get that cleaned out there. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to pour the excess out of there. So I have done my top and bottom, and I did the nose and the hand wheel end. Let's get a little bit going on this hook area up here. And you know, you're going to get some of the cleaning solution on the paint. It's hard to get everything around here going without it, but just, you know, every minute or two just swab up any that you've splashed or dripped onto the paint. Is this still rotating? Whoop. Yeah, starting to get locked up. And like I said, that's pretty normal. I'll wipe off my excess here. Now, I'm going to reset the camera again and finish up here. I want to go ahead in these places where the indicator sponge is. I just want to get a little bit of Krud Kutter on there and scrub it just to make sure that it'll come off good in the shower, you know. And that's kind of, that green stuff is just kind of a weird thing. See, it's not wanting to come off very good here. So I might have to, see that? Isn't that weird? Huh. Okay, well I finally got that off. I had to use this full strength Krud Kutter here and the scrubby. So I just kind of had to put my rags below it, you know, as it dripped all over, and scrub it with the full strength. And looks like I missed one little spot here up on the top. This kind of reminds me of doing the 347 for Jen, the mouse house with rust, if you saw that video. Whew. Okay, so I'm going to kind of drip this out so the excess comes out, and then I'm going to take it into the washing area. Okay, and I'll see you there. Okay, I'm going to start this now, and I'm just going to show you part of each section that I do rather than make you watch the whole cleaning here. But I just start by now spraying this 15-20% Krud Kutter all over the area there, like so. And then if I feel that it needs any more brushing, I'll do that here. Just don't let the machine fall over. And then kind of as I do preliminary each section, then I will rinse it. A little bit, right? Okay. Then I will change position of the machine. I'll do this top area the same way. And if you can still rotate the arm shaft, you know, the gears, go ahead if you can still do it. Mine have freed up a little bit since I got some water on it, but they'll definitely lock up on you. I used to bring the garden hose, but then I got one of these shower heads that, you know, is on a little hose here I can detach. It's slippery when you get this stuff on there. Take a look at the hand wheel. Now this nose end looks pretty good. Let me just do this. I see some little greasy spot down there in the corner. If I can't get it now, I can get it with a different brush or something on the bench. So you see that I kind of continually rinse this so I don't have any of that Krud Kutter sitting too long on the paint. So I think you got the idea there. I'm just going to set it up to dry it. Okay, just give you a little shot of how dirty that water is. Not all the water goes in the bucket, of course, but that's a lot of gunk to get out of a machine. Okay, I'm going to start drying this now, and I'll cut the volume to it, and I'm just going to show you a little bit of each section. Of course, the main thing is, if you remember where I put the cleaner in all the oil ports and around those moving joints where you would normally put oil, I want to be sure and get a lot of air in there to try and force out any moisture that's left inside there. Here we go. Yep, as expected, it's frozen solid. Okay. So I spend about 10 minutes drying it. I want it to be very dry. And as I mentioned, all the bearings and gears and everything are just frozen. But I'm going to move this back to the bench now so I can start lubricating it. And I'll check for any rust that might have developed. Okay, back on the bench now. The first thing I want to look for is see if any flash rust. This little rust that just pops up, a very thin layer of kind of orangish looking rust that shows up, and creates a problem. Everything is still frozen. I can't turn the arm wheel. This discoloration we'll just take care of with oil. I don't think it's really rust. Not seeing much rust there. I have a little piece, I have a little area with some rust right there, I can see right there, and but the gears look good. But irregardless, if I do have any rust, I'm just going to pour some of my rust remover into a little plastic cup, and you don't need very much. You start with a tablespoon or two is all, and I'll find myself a little clean brush. Okay, and then here's my rust remover, and I'll just get some on there. And I don't know if this rust that I'm seeing right here is going to show up very well, but I'll just go like that, and that is going to take care of the rust. And if you think you have any on your gears and stuff, just go ahead and just brush a real light it's not even really a coating, it's just a real light brushing of this rust remover. And you can leave it on there. It just helps prevent rust in the future. You can wipe it off with alcohol. If you get a little bit on a steel shaft like that, just wipe. And if you get it on a little bit heavy like that, I just wipe off a little bit so it's not dripping all over. This is This rust is gone now. Now here's a little spot that I frequently will see a little bit of rust. See, I have the feed dog out, and this is the feed lifting bar. This is where the feed dog attaches, and to me, you know, it's just kind of like they polish the steel there, and it's not. It just seems to get a spot of rust there. So I'll just take a little bit and put that on there and get it down into the screw holes. And I mean, it's like now the rust is gone. Okay, I see up here by the fork to feed connection here that there's a little bit of rust up here. So I'll just brush that in there. And I see a little bit on this gear, so I'm going to put it a little bit heavier on this gear because I still can't rotate, right? So I want it to kind of drip down around there and spread around on that gear. This darker metal that's not so highly polished or chromed and stuff, that's usually where I will see a little bit of that rust. If you see something around this bushing, you know, back here, if you think there's any rust, just give it a little brush. And they should make that their motto, like one brush and the rust is gone. If you put a light up in here and you see those like the fork feed connector and stuff, if it has a little rust, put this on there. If it's just this funny kind of white discoloration, that'll go away when we put a coating of oil on it. Okay, and then there's, let's see, how can I show you? There's one more little spot. I'm not even sure what this screw down here does. Maybe that's the screw that holds in the shaft for the disc driving worm wheel. But sometimes after I'm kind of all done with the machine and I'm putting wax on it, I've seen a little rust down there. So I always check that little screw head right there. I don't see any rust this time, but you know, I think we'll be okie dokie. What a clean machine, huh? Whee! I like it. And it looks like I got all the green stuff off here and didn't damage the paint. I haven't even cleaned the paint or waxed it yet, and it's shiny, so that's a very good sign. So let me get ready here, and I'll show you where to oil to start getting the machine moving again. Oh, I want to show you. See, I hardly used any of that. So I'm just going to pour the leftover back in my bottle. It's only 8 ounces. It costs $5 or $6, and it has lasted me a long time, because you just don't need much. You know, as a matter of fact, when I took out the bed feet screws on this machine, 3 of them looked terrible. So I put them in this little cup, and I just poured enough of this on top, you know, to cover them, and I just let them soak in there a while. And while I'm setting the machine up for oil, let me show you the picture of those bed feet screws. The little screws that hold the rubber feet on the bed of the machine. Okay, when you're starting to oil to free up the gears, the thing is you don't want any oil on the gear. No oil on gears, because the oil will not lubricate and keep those things cool enough, and you'll just get damaged gears down the road. And if you get oil on the gear, when you go to put grease on it, the grease won't stick to the gear because of the oil. So, you know, normally what I would do with the machine is if all the gears are turning and everything, I would just start greasing the gears. But I can't really do that properly when the machine is frozen. So I'm just quick going to put oil in the ports that go down to the gear bearings. And this goes down to the hook drive shaft bearing. You know, you don't oil them from down there, you oil them from here. And normally when you're doing maintenance oiling on this, you know, you just put a drop or two in here. But since I've stripped out, hopefully, and washed out all the old muck, I'm going to load them up with oil. I don't care if oil leaks out of them, you know, and around the bearings, that's fine. Here's the other one for the other end of the hook drive shaft. And you see how far that tube's going in. So you're getting, stick it in and get it right down to the bearing. If you don't have a little tube like this, just keep dripping it in here as best you can. Now this port is for the bottom bearing of the vertical shaft that's going up to the top. So it's the same thing. You want to get that in there. I see I have some oil coming out already, and I still have some black mucky stuff coming out of there. Let's see if I got a little. Okay. Let me clean my tip there. I just keep washing it out a little bit with oil. And then right up here on the side of the feed regulator arm, you see that? That is the top bearing of the vertical shaft. And look how far that goes in. Same thing, goes in a good inch, you know. And oops, I pulled my straw out. So I want to load that up with oil. I'm going to load this up with some of this good oil and kind of overfill. I put in a lot more than normal because I want to flush out any residual cleaner or water and stuff that's in there. And let's see, you come around to this side, not much up there, so I'm going to start up here on the top. And with what I have already oiled, hasn't made any difference. I'm still frozen solid here. So once I move up here, though, I can get into these big main bearings, and I can put oil for the hand wheel side arm shaft bearing here, and down here on the fork feed connection, and into the connection here. Now I don't want to get any oil on these gears. Just in these three ports, and then a little one in this center bushing or bearing port, and then finally the other big bearing port up here for the nose end of the arm shaft. So since I'm there, why don't I just start with that? And again, you know, when you look in the owner's manual and you're just doing some maintenance oiling like that, depending on what machine you work on, it'll say like 1, 2, or 3 drops, you know. These, I just fill it up. And if it later leaks out down here around the arm shaft, that's fine. I'll just mop it up. I'm not worried about that. I want to get plenty of oil in there. Now this one I don't put as much, because I don't even think this one is shown on the instruction manual. Now these three I'm going to oil good. This one has a little port that goes in there. And just be careful. I really don't want to drop oil on the gear. Then over here I'm going to slop it up pretty good. And down in here I'm going to, if I can get in there, I'm going to fill that right up. And I don't know what that takes when it's empty like that, 10 or 20 drops. I just gently keep putting it in until it comes up to the top of that hole. Okay? And now I'm going to go about doing other things, but those are the main things that I wanted to get some oil on. Oh, there, I just barely got it to move. Okay? Look, now it's starting to move. So I'm going to let that oil work its way in there, and what I want to do now is start putting grease on the gears. Now that I know I can turn this, you know, at least a revolution, I want to start putting grease on the gears. So I'll turn the machine over and get ready to start applying grease. And by the way, this is all worn off here, but this is Tri-Flow, T-R-I-F-L-O, Superior Lubricant. You'll see this in all the videos, and I think most people use this for this kind of oiling. PTFE in there. It's kind of like a Teflon, so it has an additive, but to help prevent wear. And it's not like the other oils that I'm telling you, household oils, 3-in-1 and Phillips 66 and those kind of little oils like that. Rather than those, you're better off just to use a plain, very fine mineral oil like Singer's branded all-purpose machine oil. You know, that's fine. So I'll be back and we'll start greasing. Okay. This is the main drive gears. This is the bottom of the vertical shaft from up on top, and then this is one end of the hook drive shaft that's going over towards the hook. So these gears you grease, no oil but a grease. And this is the grease that most people use, Tri-Flow Clear Synthetic Grease. Waterproof, prevents rust and corrosion, and this also has PTFE, chemical resistant, non-staining. I looked it up. It has a very good heat rating because, believe me, these gears get hot. You know, run your machine 4 or 5 minutes and then grab these if you think I'm joking. They get hot. So the way I put it on, I don't just glop it on there and stuff, because any grease that's not right on these teeth doesn't do anything to lubricate, and it gets thrown around in here and it collects dust and dirt. So I use a method where I put some on a stiff acrylic paintbrush, just a cheap, these are cheap brushes. You know, I got a bag of various brushes, like 20 or 25 brushes at Walmart for like $4 or $5, and some are soft for watercolors, some are stiffer like this. And what I'll do is kind of brush it onto here, and then I'll rotate the gears to spread that around. You know, I'll put a little on and so forth. I'll show you. And then any that I miss or gets slopped around, I'll just clean it off with a rag or a cotton bud, a Q-tip. So just put a little manageable amount here, and I'll start wiping it on the gears there. And this will not be the final greasing of these gears. I just want to get some on here to protect the gears. You know, because this will prevent rust and stuff, and it'll keep oil off, if I do happen to spill some oil, get a few oil drops on there, I've already got my grease, so I don't have to worry about that. And then once I get the machine finished, I'll do some greasing again. You see, it's going to push this oil. It tends to push it right out of the gear teeth, you know. And that's why you just don't slop it on and run the motor and throw it all over the place. It's a waste, and it just makes a big mess. So for me, now if you want to just like put it on there with your finger and spread it around, that's okay. I just like the brush because I don't know, I do. So I'll just get it in a couple places I haven't missed. It shows you in the owner's manual when you go to oil this, you just put one little, you know, like 1/4 inch of oil, and then as you turn it, it'll get spread around these teeth. So you see it pushes it right to the back and front of the teeth. You see it there, like this glob. See, just pushing it right out. So that's okay. I'll just keep brushing it back in a little bit and get just a nice thin coating around here. And I'll do that on all the gears. I still can't turn it. It turns like to a point and then it freezes. So keep working on oiling the machine and stuff. But, oh, I turned it too hard, it got stuck. There, whew. Okay, so let me just wipe up the excess here for now, and we'll move on. Now over here, the hook gear set, where the drive shaft comes and has a gear, then it turns 90 degrees to the actual gear on the hook shaft. They're kind of harder to get to, because you're not on the front side, you're the back side. So I use a smaller amount, and I try and hook over the top and get some started, and then I can come in here at this hole right here in the body, and I can get some spread. And if you get it on, you know, part of the gear, when you rotate the hand wheel, or in my case the arm shaft, it will spread that around, you know. So I've got it on at least about 1/3 of the gear there. I'll come over here and put a little bit more up on the top teeth that I can kind of get to, and then I will swing these gears. I'll swing these gears back and forth, and you'll see the grease, you know, ooze out around the teeth and stuff. But that's okay. We just want to get a nice little coating on there for now. These gears got real clean, didn't they, during the washing phase? Okay. So now up on the top here, I want to get grease. Let's see, how am I going to do this? Get some light in here maybe. I want to get grease on this set of gears. Oops. Right here. This is the main arm shaft, and it goes down and mates with a gear down here at the top of the vertical shaft. Kind of hard to see in there. So I will spread gear on this, I will spread grease on this, and then by rotating it around, it will get spread to the gear down in here. Okay? Let's see if I can. Oh, I think that's going to stay. So the same kind of principle. because when you can see it, you can be accurate. So this part that I can see, I'm going to spread these little dollops around into the teeth on the gear. Okay, then I'm going to rotate it the other way, and like the other half or other 1/3 of the gear, whatever I can get to here, and I'm going to spread some grease on there and rotate that back and forth, back and forth. Let's see, I can get just a little bit more, so I still can't make a full rotation of the arm shaft. Okay, very nice. Now in here, I can get underneath here to one side of that worm gear, but I can get, since I have the disc driving worm wheel out, I can see this whole side in here of the main worm gear. Let's see if I can tilt this without dropping the machine in my lap here. Can you see the big teeth on that worm gear? Right? Okay, so that's where I'm going to put a nice layer of grease in there, because I'm also going to put grease on the bottom of the wheel gear on the worm wheel, and then when the machine, I can turn that arm shaft and stuff, and then it'll spread all that around. And this is clean as the dickens in here now. I've gotten all that old, dirty, hard, mucky grease out of there, and it's nice and silver and clean. And so I want to put a nice amount of this new, fresh, good quality grease along that worm wheel. Let's see, I'll rotate it now so the dry side comes up, because this is something you don't do very often down in here. You know, this grease will last for many years, especially since we're starting out with everything clean. Go back to the other side, and I'll put some grease in there. Now that's not going to spread because I don't have the worm wheel and the wheel gear sticking in here. I haven't put that back together yet. But I've got a nice amount of grease all in those deep grooves of that worm gear. And then I will grease up the bottom of the worm wheel, the wheel gear down there on the bottom. And when I mesh that thing, put that back together, and you know, this will just be totally greased up. Yay. And like I said, when I'm done, I come back and oil the machine again, and I check my oil on all my gears, add a little more grease on the gears, add a little more if I need it, clean up any that I've slopped around and stuff. But I like to do that after I've got the machine all together and I've run it for a while and kind of got it in a working condition again. So let me switch now to oiling, because I'm going to put a light coating of oil on all these other metal parts. Okay, and I'll show you how I do that. Now for oiling the exterior of these metal parts, I just use the regular sewing machine oil. You there's not any friction on these, you know, so I don't need the Teflon oil. And I'm just going to squirt some in a cup. This oil is like $3 or $4 for this bottle at Walmart and hardware stores and online and everything else. And I've got now a softer, like a kind of a watercolor brush that I'm going to get oil on it, and I'm going to just go on the shaft and put a coat of oil. Okay, and on the outside here before it goes into the bearing, and on the selector lever and the spring and the follower and the finger lever, the rear follower, the shaft, on this part of the bite amplitude selector, just any exposed metal, steel parts. And that's just to help prevent rust. And when I'm finished, I can go back in here with the oil rag, and if I think I slopped it on too much, I'll wipe off any that I think I was excessive, you know. So now I'm going to rotate this shaft around and do the other side of it. Staying away from anything that I put oil on. I mean anything that I already put grease on, sorry. I don't want oil on that. Okay, let's get my PTFE oil from Triflow now, and I'll just put a little oil on this swivel here, and then I'm gonna, oh, how can I show you this? Let's get the machine up here and put a drop of oil on top of that shaft that the rear follower goes up and down, and on top of that shaft, and so I can exercise that lifter. When I go to put all that back together again, the shaft will be oiled. Okay, rotate my machine a little bit more, the arm wheel. While I'm up here, I'm going to go ahead and put some more oil in this heavy bearing on the end. And on the elliptical of the forked feed connection, and the little oil port next to it, and then down on the big port here with the bearing on the other end. Okay, because it soaked through. Now, like I said, if this is so much oil it starts leaking out around the bushings, that's okay. As a matter of fact, I'm wondering if you can see here, while I've been turning this around, I've got some oil that's leaked out of the machines. Right? So that's good, because if there was any residual cleaner or water in those bearings or bushings, I'm forcing it out with oil, right? Getting it out of there. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to come around and oil up the hook, the feed lift bar, which all the rust is gone off of there now. Get all the little metal parts around here. Like I said, the aluminum you don't need to oil, but any of the steel, I just get a nice coating of oil on before I start putting all the parts back together. Okay, up here in the nose, oops, you can grab a hand light here. Up here in the nose, I put oil on the counterbalance. Put some oil all around on that. Okay. So that's the top, the nose, and the hook area. Let's come in here, and I'm going to do the feed regulator area. I'm going to go right in there on the feed regulator, if you saw that video, and I'm going to get this up so I can go in the slot that the slide goes into and get some oil on that slide block. There we go. And get that a nice coating of oil and on the stud here and everything. Protect it. Very good. And I'll come around to the hand wheel, and I'm going to go in there on that counterbalance, you know, the hand wheel and counterbalance, and I'm going to put oil all on that. And out here on the threads, just a nice coating of oil on these steel parts. And I'm even going to put a little on the end of that hinge screw that holds the feed regulator to the forked feed connection. Okay. Get this stuff out of my way here, so that I can lay the machine down, because I've got quite a bit of oil to drip and to brush on this bottom area now. Let's get this guy back down here. Okay. So I've got the oil points that are shown in the instruction manual for these metal on metal pivot points, and some of them have a little oil point that I put my tube in and drop some oil, and some, like the bushings here, you just drop in the space, and then there's the oil point and a space. Okay, then there's some on the other side, but let's get this going here. I get my little tube right in that oil port hole. There go the air bubbles, and squeeze it in there pretty good. It doesn't want to go in anymore. And I'll come here next to it, put some drops. I'll put 2 or 3 good drops. This is over oiling, remember. Down here on the open bushing. And then up here there's another oil hole, little tiny oil hole, and I'll squeeze that oil in there. Oops, now I see it dripping out the bottom. So over oiled, right, to flush anything out that's left in there. Come around to this side, and I have some similar things. Now this is the feed lift bar with that little figure 8 kind of connection, so I'm going to put a couple drops on there because the instruction manual says that's an oil point, and I can see metal on metal. And then this is what I call the open bushing. I'll put a few drops, some more open bushing. There's no oil holes on anything on this side. And then back here where the feed rocker connects, you'll see the hinge screws in there and the metal on metal swivels. So I just put oil in those little cracks. Okay. Da-da-da. Okay, so that is all the oil ports. Let's see if all this has loosened up anything more. Still gets up. Nope. It's starting to go farther around. Let's see if I can mark this set screw. Let's see. Yeah, now I can make a full rotation. It still wants to hang in a couple places, but it's getting looser and looser all the time. But I'll tell you, when you take that thing out and you dry it and you bring it to your workbench or table and it's frozen, man, your first feeling is it is never going to move again. It's like, wow, what have I done? What did this guy Andy tell me to do? My God, I've ruined the machine. But just keep working at it like this, and just keep thinking about all that nasty old stuff that you have flushed out, and all the beautiful new oil and grease that's in place. Now I'm going to put a coat on these bars that they look so terrible after you wash them and dry them. You know, they get all milky looking, and it's like, man. But if you just brush a light coating of oil on there, it'll soak right in to the surface of that metal. And again, we can wipe off the excess later. You just want to get a nice thin coating there and protect it, because it's going to take a while for me to get all these parts back in the machine. I took them out and put them back in the videos earlier in this series to show you, you know, this is how you take it out, this is how you put it in. But when I was done filming, I took it all back out and I cleaned the little pieces with Krud Kutter and the bars and all the stuff that I took out. And I've got it all clean and waiting in little baggies for me, so when I get this all cleaned and oiled and moving again, I can start putting all that back together. And I might do a video of putting the grease on that disc driving worm wheel and setting it back down against my newly greased worm gear, because that's kind of cool, and that's something, you know, you don't see or do very often. So you might enjoy seeing a quick video of that. Okay, looks pretty oily and greasy, right? And people say, hey, you said don't get oil where it doesn't belong and clean it up because it just attracts dirt and dust. Well, I'm not sewing, it's not getting lint. I want to let that soak in, and later I will wipe up any extra grease and extra oil, and then I'll reassemble the machine and start adjusting and testing it. And I use a cleaner wax on the paint, and when I'm all finished, I put a couple coats of carnauba wax on it. But I will oil and grease everything a final time, you know, to make sure I got in there, I didn't make a mess and leave it all over, but I've got everything lubricated well. So, looking pretty good. Now, I'm going to go up, and if you remember where I started, a long time ago, right, with the 4 oil ports for the bearings. This one that's next to the hook, and it's up above that hook shaft bearing. I'm going to fill that up with oil again. I think a lot of that's already leaked out, but I'm just going to put some more in there. Come over to the second one that's at the other end of that hook drive shaft, right? Make sure I got plenty of oil in there. This one, go in, it's going to be right up against the bottom of the vertical shaft. It's the nice bearing bushing thing for the vertical shaft. See, I'm still getting a little bit of black stuff oozing out there. So I didn't get that as clean as I wanted to, I think. Of course, it's anything that sits on the bottom when the machine stands up is where all the oil and gunk goes to, so it's the thickest. I'll check that again. I may stick a proxy brush in there and see what's going on. But the last of those four is right up here next to the feed regulator, the one that goes in and it goes to the gear bushing and bearing on the top of that vertical shaft. Okay. Oh, look, there we go. There we go, look. It's already free moving now. Now, it's not as smooth, it's not even as smooth as it will be. But it's very freewheeling now. And I'm loving it because it's full of all that new grease and oil. Okay, so washing, drying, and lubricating. Boy, I got some excess oil down here. That's all right. It's worth every penny of that oil to get this lubricated up. Now, if I can find my little proxy brush, I'm going to show you one more thing. You stuck with me this long. Don't go away. Aha! Here it is. Now this is a proxy brush, like you use between your teeth. And this style is called the Christmas tree. Whoop, where'd I go? There. The Christmas tree shape. They have some that are just a narrow cylinder, but I like this Christmas tree shape. And for those of you that haven't seen it, what I do is I'm going to go oil every screw hole, so that when I go to put the parts on, all the screw holes are have a nice little bit of oil. So I'll just dip it in that oil. Okay, and I'll say, well, there's where I put that screw, and here's a big one where I mount the lampshade. And no, this is maybe the mount for the lampshade. Oh, that's up here. What is that? That maybe holds the light fixture. Over here, this holds the screw for the indicator plate of the feed, or the stitch length. Now, you know, those are going to be like aluminum, so they're not going to rust. But I have just found when you start putting all these parts back together, that's why I put a little coating of oil, a rub oil on the parts after I clean them, and that's why I lubricate these kind of screw holes, is so that when I put it back together, it's just easier. And then here's the two for the indicator plate, right, for the needle plate lifting, or throat plate lifting bracket. And this is one for the bobbin winder tension unit. And then there's one up here for the bobbin winder stop. Right? Beep. Just a little bit of oil like that. And then I'm going to come around here, and this is for the, whoops, where's my light? I get that hand light. This is for the tension pin releasing lever hinge screw. And this is for the pressure bar lifter lever hinge screw. Okay. And this is where the take-up lever connection post is going to slide back in. There's one there. Whoop. There's one there, and get a little bit more oil, and then the other one is here. The hinge like post is there, and then let's see if I can come up a little bit. Okay. Then there's two up here, one in the front, and there's one in the back, and those are the holes for the arm cover screws. Okay. And then there's these little tiny holes over here where the little hinge pins of the nose cover go in. One there and one down here on the bottom. So I like that Christmas tree shape because it can bend and do the tiny holes, but it'll spread out in the bigger holes and still get the oil you know, spread around there. Right? And then for these bushings, you know, the needle bar bushing you're not supposed to take out, and I don't, but when I stick the needle bar in there, I want it to start out with some lubrication, so I'll just get some in there. And when I stick that big heavy-duty pressure bar bushing back in here, I want some lubrication when I go to put that part back in. Okay, and same little thing for the throat plate lifter pin guide holes, right? Get both of those, and then where's my let's see where I'm going to put my feed dog screws back in, and see how all that rust is gone. Of course, you see it there. It's all clean and no more rust. So I think that's about everything that I wanted to show you. You know, this wash dry lube it tends to be a lengthy video, but it's an important process. It's the whole secret to my success. That machine is so clean you could eat off of it, inside and out. All those decades of muck and crud are gone, and I have new, fresh, high quality grease and fresh, high quality oil. And really, I wouldn't have to do this again for 40 or 50 years, because now I can just keep it clean and keep it oiled. Right? Wipe off old grease on the gears once a year and brush some new grease on. You know, keep the lint out of it. Don't over oil. When I oil the parts, you'll see me, I'll take my oil rag and wipe off any extra on the bars and the shafts and stuff. You'll see. So I might do a little video about putting that disc driving worm wheel back in there, because I described the greasing process, but now that you've seen how to get that main worm wheel on the arm shaft, I'll show you that gear wheel on the worm wheel and how you stick it down in there and it meshes, and then you're very, very good. Boy, this is already, I mean, I don't have the hand wheel on here, of course. I'm just pinching the end of the arm shaft, but it is moving freely. Yeah, feed is moving freely. We go down to the longer stroke. Yee. See all these now? Oiled up and good. Wipe up the... you know what? I think while I'm down here, I'm going to... because I can reach up in there and do that fork feed connection shaft and the rocker shaft. I can put some oil on there while I've got this all open. Just a little protection, just a little coating of oil. You can also, because you have the 3-pin out, you can go in there if you need to. But usually you just come up from the bottom here and just get a little oil and just drag that brush across it, you know, like you did here. Okay. Come back and you will see next time the greasing and reinsertion of the disc driving worm wheel. Thanks for your patience with me, but maybe for a once or twice in your lifetime cleaning and lubrication of this, it was worth it. Take care.